Right then, we're at Brocard in France, another Meaty G victim. It's absolutely cracking bait. I think you should give it a go. But I've caught fish after fish after fish. Beautiful. Lovely warm day. I'm going to get it back. Morning. On this trip I'm down at Brocard in France. I've been here before. This week it's been pretty hard going, to be fair. Massive change in the weather. It's overcast today, but all week it's been absolutely boiling hot. Sun's been burning your eyes out. First hot week of the season, if you like, and to be honest, generally it doesn't really have the effect on a lot of lakes where, you know, people think, oh, sun's out, the carp are going to start feeding and going mad. You know, I picked a few fish off, but generally what happens, you get the lake warming up really quick. Like this lake's 3.5 to 4 foot average depth, so it's quite a shallow lake, so it's going to warm up quick. Generally what happens on here is all the winter crud, lake bed, what's, you know, died and that, it all starts to lift and it generally puts the fish off the feed. But this session Meaty G does it again. You know, even when it's really hard going, you know, Meaty G will pull you a few bites out of the hat. And on these videos through this season, I'll try and pick a few of my favourite baits from the retro bait range and take you through how I use it. Like some work well with nuts, like tiger nuts, other baits. This one here, what I'm going to talk to you about, is a fish meal bait. Loads of robin red through it. Billy, who owns Retro Baits, it's one of his original mixes from years gone by, and you know, he's absolutely took waters apart on it. All the attractors and different bits and bobs that go into this to make it what it is. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Meaty garlic, you know, personally I don't really like garlic in bait because, you know, you always get that really vivid smell of the garlic come through, but with this one it's not the garlic oil, it's garlic flake what goes through it, so it's quite subtle, and it's a bit like putting salt in your potatoes. It just brings on the flavours and improves the bait no end. It's quite a, you know, being a fish meal, it's definitely a bait that I like to use if I'm on a water, you know, fishing the same water all season. You can really get the fish onto the bait. But the other plus point with it, it's quite an instant bait as well. So if you're just dropping on the water for a quick night, it's one of them baits that the fish generally don't turn away from. When you break it open, it's quite a hard skin, but it's got a lovely cakey texture on the inside. So you know, when the fish are eating it, it's not like they're eating bullets and that type of thing, you know, what you might get with some baits, or some baits are really too soft to keep on a rig for too long, and, you know, you wake up in the morning reeling and your bait's gone. You don't generally get problems like that with this. But, you know, early summer and that type of thing, something else Billy will do is hardened up baits. So if the roach are really active and they're really pecking at your baits, he'll do the hardened up baits for you as well. All top ingredients goes into the bait. You know, it really is a proper fish puller, and it's been rock hard this week. You know, I think I'm the only one who's caught on this lake this week, and I'm on 7 fish, and just, you know, fishing it cute, keeping a tiny bit of bait going in, just bits of flavour. But like little tricks that I use this time of year, you know, it's just coming out of winter, and you know, it's warmed up, and a lot of people, I've seen it myself down the lake, you know, they're really keen, let's get some bait in, the fish are going to feed. But generally how I go about it is I'll fish mainly crumbed baits, almost dust. So as fish pass through, as they kick up, even if they're not feeding, they'll breathe it in, and it's a bit like, oh, I remember that. You know, get a bit of a taste thing going, and you can almost it's like a little trick I use for fooling the carp. They're not actually gone down and fed on it, but as they kick it up, the next one passing through, it goes up, they breathe it through, and they get that taste like they're feeding. And then once they start, and that's a really good way as you're coming out of winter. That's a good way to kick-start the fish. Going on from like dust baits, as in like a ground bait, you've crumbed it up, which it crumbs up beautiful for that. Next one is basically, you use a crusher of some sort, and how many times you turn it to how fine you get it. But if you put it in and just do a couple of turns, like that, you almost get a lumpy ground bit of bait. That's probably the next bit I'll go to as the season's going on, or this session if they were feeding a bit heavier, I'd use that type of effect. Next one up from that is basically, it's not that over there. It very much goes on what waters I'm fishing. If I'm fishing a really silty water and the time of the year, so in winter for instance, you can get away on a silty, get away with like a really crumbed up bait for the winter, because the fish aren't feeding so hard. In the summer though, basically you want to put the odds in your favour when you're getting bites, because how you feed is you basically saying to the fish, feed this way so I can get a bite. And if you go the wrong direction, you're putting the odds more in the fish's favour instead of your own. So if it was summer for instance and the fish are really feeding heavy, and I put loads of dust bait down, really small items, and you got thick silt for instance, basically what you're going to be saying to the fish is absolutely dig the hell out of the lake bed, and what's going to happen, you're going to bury your rig and that type of thing, and you're not going to put the odds in your favour. So what works in the winter, like massive attractions for fine bits around the swim, because they're not feeding so heavy, you're getting a full effect in the winter. But in the summer I generally go another way. Hard lake beds you get away with it, but like silty lake beds you don't. And next stage up from that, instead of crumbing it, I'll just basically get a knife and I'll cut them in half. So what happens there, you're getting away from the crumb and the digging effect, and the fish are going to come round and go, pick that one, move a bit, pick that one, move a bit. And because they're half baits, generally they flutter down onto the lake bed and sit nicely on top of the silt. So you're basically telling the fish, don't dig, you haven't got to dig for bait, you can pick one up from there, one up from there, one up from there type of thing. So you're improving your own catches by how you're feeding. Obviously bleeding obvious, the next one up from that is your round boilies. Obviously if you want to keep disturbance down, you don't want to spam, you don't want to take a bait boat out, so small baits as in chops and that type of thing are going to be a nightmare to get out. Say if you're fishing 50-60 yards say for instance, or 100 yards, and you don't want to spam, so that comes into it as well, like the disturbance in your swim. You might want to flick a few baits out, easy to do with a catty or a throwing stick if they're still round. And obviously the smaller the bait in my eyes the better, it's going to fill them up less. A kilo with like 12 millers, what you get, probably 400 odd baits, where 18 millers for the same weight you're basically getting probably less than half of that. So if you imagine a fish has picked up an 18 bait and then another one, he's probably sat there and think, yeah, I'm full now, I'm happy, but he's going to have to pick up and work a bit harder feeding on the smaller baits, and you're going to keep him there longer and you've got more chance of him actually picking your up bait up. But as the further distance that I want to fish, obviously the bigger the baits that I use, so I always take something like a few 16s or 14s with me, or if I know I'm going to be fishing distance and I want to keep that disturbance down, I just want to flick a few baits out with a throwing stick, You know, I might even resort to a couple of 18 millers, just a little bit of smell around the area, not too much. But it also goes on what lake you're fishing. You know, some lakes come to the sound of the spom and that, but generally the waters I fish, bit less fish in the lakes, and you know, disturbances, everything, and keeping it quiet. It's going to get you more bites every time. As in another little tip I could give you, when I basically a Meaty G in the range, there's obviously pop-ups, hardened up baits Billy will do for you, and you know, myself, I'm down at the bait shop as well quite a bit now, and you know, with the pop-ups, the wafters, the glugs, obviously the frozen bait, shelf life. If you want shelf life and you're going to France for a week or so and you want a couple of bags to take with you, which is going to keep good for the end of the week, you know, sometimes it's worth just taking a couple of bags of shelf life. And you know, and if it's warm and you're struggling keeping your bait in tip-top condition, you know, and you're having to air dry it, and you don't really want to be using the bullets, a couple of bags of shelf life, you know, will go a long way, and it'll keep you catching at the end of the week. And get on the Meaty G. What else is there to say?